Hello, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about our sponsor, Anchor, hopefully at a louder volume this week. First of all, it's free and it has creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. I found it really easy to move the segments around in the editing process, and you can put the ads in wherever you want too, which is really helpful. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. This has been super helpful with the success of my first episode, having it on all of these platforms for you guys to listen to. And Anchor does that for you, which makes it super easy. And you can make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership, which is perfect for people like me who are just starting a brand new podcast. So it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. If you've been thinking about a podcast you want to start, this is me encouraging you to do it. All you got to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started.
All right, welcome back to Navigating Adulthood in IDD. I'm so excited for today's guests, Jenny and Brent Anderson, the awesome sibling team behind Celebrate EDU. And Brent has also created the Unintentional Humor volumes, which we'll dive into more later. So to kind of start, thank you both for coming on. Do you guys kind of mind introducing yourselves real quick?
I'm Brent Anderson. I'm the inspiration for Unintentional Humor and also the inspiration for Celebrate EDU as well. I also, so I've written these two Unintentional Humor books. I speak at events and conferences and schools, and I also do a lot of the online lessons for Celebrate EDU as well. I record the lessons.
Awesome. And I am Jenny Anderson. I am the co-founder and CEO of Celebrate EDU, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities through entrepreneurship and self-advocacy education. So we have all kinds of programs that teach self-advocacy skills and help people start their own businesses or find employment that fits their interests and strengths.
Yay, that's so exciting and so needed for individuals with disabilities. Like, so many of them want to work and just have so much, there's just so many barriers and obstacles. So it's cool that you guys can kind of break down those walls for people.
Yeah.
It is great to do that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we talked about this a little bit before I pressed record, but I actually did meet you, Brent, very briefly at a resource fair. We were both vendors, and I stopped by, and you had your unintentional joke books out, and my sister has autism. So when I saw the books, I was just like, yes, Sarah would love these. And she was actually the first guest on this podcast too. And in the show notes, your book is actually a resource because I asked her afterwards, is there anything that you want to share with people? And she was like, oh, you got to put Brent's book down. You have to put that as a resource.
Well, yeah. Since I have autism myself, my books, obviously, I take language very literally. So it shows in the form of cartoons and short stories how I literally took different forms of language like idioms and nouns and verbs. And it's a great inspiration for people who have autism and other disabilities or are learning English as a second language because they don't understand our expressions. So
yeah,
it's one thing it's really great that your sister mentioned me in the first podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
And yeah, it's super cool. And it's funny too. I thought it was funny too, like looking at it. And my sister does art, so like the visuals with the jokes, it really clicked and connected with her. So it's cool that you're able to create these books for everybody to kind of enjoy and also kind of understand, because she does take things very literally too, and can kind of find humor in that too and connect with people. So obviously that led you to creating the books. What was kind of the journey to creating those books?
Well, I tried to do traditional employment, and I also went to community college trying to get a degree as a zookeeper, and none of those really worked out, partially for safety reasons for the zoo and for traditional employment, because it was like exhausting and stressful, and like I worked at a grocery store for my traditional employment, so I was like doing grocery bagging, and it was stressful and exhausting, and I really did not like that job at all. And so my mom had written down all kinds of stories about me when I was growing up with all different situations, and she asked if we could work together to write our first book, and it took a while to get it off the ground, but the books have been around my business has been around for about 10 years now, and so that's kind of, and after the first book was written, I eventually got asked to tell my story at a conference, and then my business just took off from there, because I started going around the country and speaking at different events and conferences, and going to different autism fairs to sell my books. And so that's basically how my business got started.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And congratulations on 10 years. That's such an achievement. That's so cool.
Yeah. I'm really proud that my business has gotten so far. So it's done so far.
Yeah, definitely. Has COVID really hit kind of the speaking engagements?
Yes, it has. Because no one is doing the events that I always go to, obviously I haven't been able to speak for a while. I mean, my last presentation was back in January, so before the coronavirus COVID even hit here. So, so it's been quite a while, but now I'm trying to figure out how to keep my business going in a different way in the meantime. And Celebrate EDU is also going in a different direction, so I have to do the same too. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a pivoting time for businesses. It's tough. Oof.
It is.
It is tough. Yeah, sorry that you haven't been able to speak in a while. I feel that. And like with the resource fairs we both go to, just hopefully soon.
Yes,
Good.
Let's hope so.
I think Brent's cooking with some interesting ideas for how to continue his business.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see, get different stuff going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can be an exciting time in the pivoting too. It's both scary and exciting, because it's like, oh, I could try these new ideas. I don't know if they'll work, but we can try them.
Yeah,
You certainly can.
So I feel like it was kind of spoken about in your story a little bit. Definitely your family is a big support in your life. Are there any other supports, or would you like to speak more on that, on how they kind of helped you grow your business and get to where you are today?
Yes. Yes, we have our cartoonist, Alan Lewis. He drew out the cartoons in my books, because I'm not a good artist. None of my family really can draw too well. So
I can't either.
So we hired him to draw our cartoons. I would describe to him what I saw in my head when I heard different forms of language, and he would draw them out as I described them to him. And obviously they would change, but then eventually we got our final products. And so he was a big support for for getting my business started. And also I used to, we self-published our books. So I lived in California at the time, and we had a print shop a local print shop where I would go and print out my books when I needed more copies. Of course, now we do it here at the office, but also another support, obviously, emotionally, are some of my friends and my pet cat, and also I have also the bus that I used to get around was a big support, because I don't drive, so I need the bus to get around. Of course, I don't use that so much right now because of COVID, but speaking of cats, I see that you
right.
have...
She heard you. She came right on cue. Yeah, Queenie is very part of my brand right now. She's kind of in all of my videos, and likes to bomb the podcast too, so we'll see if I keep this in the last edit or not. Maybe, but yeah,
I love.
Yeah. I have
Awesome.
I have a black cat. His name is Smoke.
Aw.
He's got a little extra special feature. He's got two extra toes on his front paws, on both fronts.
Go to see.
He's the
No way.
two
Yeah.
polydactyl cats.
Yeah,
both have
Queenie's
polydactyl
polydactyl too. How funny.
What are the odds of that?
I don't know. This is a good question. I don't know, because yeah, this is the first polydactyl cat I met myself. So, but yep, she's got extra toes.
Same goes for me. I mean, the first vet I took him to, but he'd been working for 30 years and he'd never seen a polydactyl cat before. So
Crazy.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, and you listed so many good supports. So like family, friends, like shouting at your cartoonist. I love how you touched on the bus, because I feel like people without disabilities might not think about that as much. Well, depending, because people who utilize the bus systems probably do think about these things. But for people who own cars and drive cars, they probably don't think about that as much, and how that can really limit kind of opportunities for individuals with disabilities. Yeah.
but I figured out a way to make it work.
Right, exactly. And yeah, and you made it work. And then letting people know, like, that's also, in non-COVID times, that's a way that you can get more opportunities, is utilizing those systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know when you had your grocery store job, part of the reason you found that job was because it was one of the few jobs available on the bus route. So in terms of, it was a limiting opportunity because there were only a few places he could get to conveniently to work. And it was not a good fit for Brent. That's why self-employment has been so good, because you can work from home. You don't have to rely on, hey, I only can reach these certain places through a bus route or whatever transportation is available to reach those places.
That's true, because it was also not on the bus route, but it was also, I could walk there if I had to. So
right.
And so I could either only get to places where I could walk or take the bus, and that's it. So
yeah, I feel like it really shows how society, like, we're kind of working towards inclusion, but definitely not there yet, because you have these stores that are providing employment, but then there's only so many of those stores, and then there's only so many of those kind of locations on the bus route. So then you're stuck choosing between a couple of jobs you don't like. So it's exciting that self-employment is an option when there aren't a lot of other options.
Yeah, exactly.
That's totally true.
So, as someone with autism, what kind of advice would you give someone with disabilities looking for a job?
Well, I would say try to find something that you're passionate about and see if you can find a way to make a career out of it. Because if you love what you're doing, then it doesn't feel like you're working. You're just doing something that you enjoy.
I love that. That's such good advice. And I think for everybody too, is like, because if you're going to get burnt out otherwise in any kind of position.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Would you as like describe the grocery store job like leading to a burnout?
Okay, well,
classic. Yeah, let's do it.
So basically, at first it wasn't so bad. I accept the fact I had to wait. My hours started at like 3 a.m, so I had to get up really early and go to work. And mostly I was moving stuff forward on shelves at first, and then I moved into bagging groceries. And it was when I got that's when things started getting bad, because it was fast paced. I had to keep at it without pausing usually, because the lines just kept coming and all that stuff. I wanted to say what was on my mind to my fellow employees that I was working with, but I couldn't because I had to focus on work. Oftentimes I would not be able to take my breaks or go home on time because they'd ask me to stay longer. And I also got called in on days where I wasn't supposed to be working. So they were supposed to be my days off, and yet I got called in anyway. So, and then basically the only time I ever got any breathing room was when I went out into the parking lot to get grocery carts. But that was the only time I ever got any like breathing room or when I was on break. And after, I would have quit that job in 2 weeks because I did not like it at all. But my mom kind of insisted that I stick to it and say it'll get better, just keep at it and all that kind of stuff. But it didn't get any better. So I left the job after 6 months. So.
Wow, good for you sticking around for 6 months though. Like just knowing you didn't like it so soon, like, and but I'm glad, yeah. And I mean, I'm an entrepreneur too, so I relate. Where it's like I've done jobs where it's like, oh, like it doesn't feel right, and you have you know, you have family telling you, oh, keep at it, like it could get better. But like to a certain extent, like you're going to know what's best for you, and it kind of leads to that like self-employment where you can control your own schedule, which I feel like is a huge way to kind of make sure you get the kind of needed breaks that you need in the day, is like being able to control that own schedule.
Yeah,
exactly. I do think it was good for Brent to have that experience so that you can realize how great self-employment is, because you have something to compare it to where you're like, I know you know, self-employment can definitely be hard. It's not easy. You know, you still have to motivate yourself. You still have to work. It's not like you just sit around all day. But knowing that the alternative is potentially to go work in a job where your schedule is changing all the time, and those things that are really hard for you, you've got to learn through that experience. And I think one thing that I know at Celebrate, we try to create curricula around understanding yourself and what's important in a work environment, and these different factors that we don't really talk about in school traditionally, around like, what's the best environment for me to work in? And I think a lot of us learn that the hard way. So I know Brent did, but trying to see if there's ways that we can learn that about ourselves before we go try something that doesn't work, is kind of something we've talked about a lot. But I learned a lot from Brent and his experience, and seeing that, you know, predictability is huge for him to be successful, knowing his schedule. And when they were changing his schedule all the time, that was just like really hard. So being able to know that that's something important for you to be successful at your business is something you learn the hard way from this grocery store, I feel like.
Yes, yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about like figuring out what environments works best for people, because I think even like any professional, that's not something that's talked about in undergrad. You get your degree, you're thrown into the workforce, and then it's like, what happens? So I feel like everyone's just like thrown into the workforce and has to like figure it out. But then, you know, if you have disabilities, if you have difficulty fitting into kind of the traditional like workforce, it can be really difficult. So knowing like what environments, what kind of things about your job is going to make you happy as an employee, because it's going to be different for everybody too. I love that that's part of your curriculum at Celebrate EDU.
Yeah, I think it's something that we all wish we had not learned the hard way. So trying to figure it out earlier. And it is so true. It's so different from person to person. Some things that make me happy at work would make other Brent miserable, and vice versa. And that's totally okay. Just knowing that about yourself can be so empowering.
Yeah, and it can just be, it's just kind of unfortunately another barrier for individuals with disability who want to work, because if they don't have that knowledge or don't have resources to kind of get that knowledge, they're either going to learn it the hard way, or, you know, they're going to try a job maybe that really doesn't work and then kind of fall out.
Yeah. And then what I saw with Brent as a sibling was that he went and got this job after applying for so many jobs and never getting an interview. He finally got a job, and then it was so miserable that he left that job and was like, I can't work. You know, that's the takeaway for a lot of people with disabilities, is that there's so few opportunities. When one of the few that you can get doesn't work, it feels like, okay, well then I won't be able to work at all. And I think that is the reality around just like when there are so few opportunities for any community, when one doesn't work out, it's so disheartening. It's like another level of like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine applying for so many jobs again, starting from scratch.
Right.
And not knowing what's going to fit, I think, is the hard part.
Yeah, so I feel like this is a great transition into focusing even more on Celebrate EDU and the kind of things that you guys are offering. Would you guys kind of mind talking about maybe some of the offerings you guys have right now, and kind of how can we help these individuals with disabilities find those dream jobs, create their own dream jobs, especially maybe if they've had a job that doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely. So Brent has been a huge part of the development of all of our Celebrate programs, and we've changed a lot during COVID because we had to, but I think it's also honestly a little bit better than it was before, so feeling good about that. So right now we're offering free online classes for anyone that's interested in learning some skills for work, self-advocacy, or just understanding themselves a little bit better. And Brent is the guest instructor on most of those.
Yes, I am.
So you want to tell a little bit what they talk about?
Yeah. So what we do is we do our meetings on Zoom, and we do different things on different days of the week. We usually do them Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And we do different things like self-advocacy, discovering your strengths, and professional etiquette and stuff like that. And we show short videos. We do activities, like sometimes we do quizzes, sometimes we do, and then more often than not, though, we do worksheets that we send out email to the people who participated in the class for them to fill out on their own. And then they can follow up and send back their results to Celebrate EDU to show what they did. And basically, a lot of that's mostly what we do now.
Yeah.
In the past, we did a lot of those workshops in person, and we would teach people to teach the lessons themselves, but because of COVID, we had to change it to just doing it ourselves. So
yeah, doing a lot more online education. So what's nice about the Zoom meetings is that they're not like a webinar, like they're very interactive. So you're on with a small group of people and we speak. It's just kind of like we are on Zoom right now having this conversation, talking back and forth. So it's not someone talking at you and you're listening to a recording, like you're actually on live with Brent or someone at Celebrate EDU team, and you're talking about whatever topic. So you do watch a video, but then you discuss it and you look through a worksheet and have a conversation. So it's a little different than I think a lot of the online education that's happening, which is like a webinar. You get on, you just like listen to someone talk. Our hope is that it's interactive and that our students are really learning something and are able to kind of get to know each other and Celebrate EDU and what we're about. And we're also offering some self-paced courses for anyone that wants to take kind of more intensive stuff. So these live classes are usually like 30 to 45 minutes. So short, but we have opportunities for anyone willing to go a little deeper and wanting to learn more. So we have these kind of week-long self-paced courses where you get a login to the Celebrate EDU website and you log in and watch videos and complete activities and worksheets and assessments. And are able to learn more about yourself or different topics. So some of those classes are self-discovery, introduction to self-employment, professional etiquette, things like that.
Awesome. Oh, it's so exciting. I love those services so much and just the different courses. And that you guys are offering them for free is amazing too. Like so accessible. And yeah, and I watched the little promo video, and it's so fun, like the balloons, and then it was really nice to hear like the people at the end talk about kind of their stories and thoughts about how Celebrate EDU courses have been helping them out too. So it's just awesome. You guys are connecting with people with the Zoom, and then like providing this really, really needed resource to people.
Yep, it's been really it's been a big learning experience for us in a really cool way to see kind of what people are looking for and what we can provide. You know, we've been running Celebrate EDU programs for 6 years at this point. So typically they're more intensive, long programs about launching your own business, which we do have, as well as for people that are interested in, you know, really starting their own business. We have those types of classes, but what we've really been focusing on during COVID and right now while we're all at home is what can we do that's easily accessible, that people can learn kind of quickly, that they can develop these skills so that when this is all over, we're feeling more prepared for the future. And yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I kind of have my big question of the podcast. So it's kind of, I always have like I feel like a bigger kind of question for the community too. So do either of you have any tips for the community on how they can provide more jobs with appropriate support for individuals with disabilities that they're going to want? It's a big question. So like, what could we like brainstorm as a community? Because we have these little jobs offering some opportunities. What could they do to improve their opportunities?
Well, I think there needs to be a more diverse set of opportunities, and not just sticking to certain categories and that have historically been allotted for people with disabilities to work. The term that's been used is the 5Fs over the years. I don't know if you've heard of that kind of terminology. The 5Fs used to stand for, kind of still stand for food. So a lot of like grocery stores, fast food, flowers, so gardening, filth, janitorial work, folding, so working at a thrift store and folding clothes, and filing, so admin work. And those were just the categories that were often just allotted for. Those are the only available jobs. So I think that there's so many more opportunities in our communities than just those 5Fs, and those 5Fs can really fit for certain people, and think that's wonderful if someone wants to fit there. And that's what their interest is, and that's what their skill set is. That's wonderful. But I think just opening more opportunities and not kind of constraining our minds to thinking those are what people with disabilities are capable of. I can tell you've worked with hundreds of students, and they all, the varying interests, the artistic talent, the, technology skills, it varies from person to person, just like everyone else. And I think we're trying to fit people into a box that should not exist. Just not having that preconceived notion of what people can do, instead just meeting them and understanding where they are as an individual.
And that's kind of something both our businesses try to promote, that they can do more than what people typically think they can do. That's what my business promotes, and that's what Celebrate EDU promotes, that there are many more opportunities than people think, and they just have to figure out a way to do those things.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree and love like all the points that you guys just touched. So good. And yeah, I think it's just difficult because I think communities think, oh, but we're providing these opportunities. Like you said, like they can work at the grocery store, they can work over here. But yeah, what if there's somebody who's interested in something that's completely not offered? And so how as a community can we open those opportunities? And I think Celebrate EDU, you guys are doing a good job at opening that door. Like that's one solution.
It's one solution, right? There's got to be a lot, though. In order to change it, it can't just be, hey, we're teaching this one thing. And we know we're just a small cog in a wheel that needs to really change how we're thinking about what is available and what people are capable of. And I think a huge part of that is understanding understanding the interests and the skill set of individuals, and seeing what kind of opportunities we can connect them with. And I think some resources that really aren't tapped into in most communities are small businesses where you could maybe intern or work part-time. They might not have the capacity to hire on a bunch of people to work there, but a small bike repair shop, if that's something you're interested in, like those are things that are at the heart of every single community, are these small businesses. And just, I think a lot of people think it's scary to hire someone with a disability. They don't know how to, they don't know what supports are needed. And I think there's a lot of education and support the disability community could give to these businesses to help them better understand what they can do. And then I also think that I can just say from years of doing this that self-employment is looked at as like not really an option for people with disabilities. It is kind of like the last resort. Oh, they couldn't get a job, so they will be self-employed, or they couldn't succeed at a job, so that will be their last resort, which I just can't wrap my head around, because it should, the statistics show that individuals with disabilities are actually 2 times more likely to be self-employed than the general population, because it has a lot of what we've been talking about, the accommodations and that you can build self-employment don't exist in a traditional work environment unless it's a really special one. And so I think that instead of looking at it as, oh, I guess they'll pursue that, it should be something that isn't included as an option from the very beginning. You could pursue competitive integrative employment, you could pursue self-employment, and those are options available to you, and it's not looked at as a secondary option or looked down upon. as a just like a hobby. That's not, it really is an opportunity. So
awesome. I think that says it. And I'll shout this out to kind of on my Instagram too, to the community too, because I like to kind of do these bigger questions kind of near the end. Because unfortunately we can't solve it in a podcast. I wish that we could. I wish we could.
I think that's super cool. I think those are the important questions that the community needs to be talking about. And I always find Brent's perspective on those types of things interesting as, a person on the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, I would say one thing that they can do is try not to judge people because they have a disability, because if people have like a mental disability, I tend to find that people say, oh, they're not really that smart. They can't really do very much because they don't have the mind to do so. Or if they're physically disabled because of their physical disability, therefore they can't physically do something. And like they always need help, or they can never do anything on their own. But the truth is, they can do things on their own. It takes effort to do so and time to do it. It's just, you have to make the effort to make it work, and not just, and like, don't judge them by what people think they can do, because that's kind of a stereotypical way of thinking in my view. Because like when people first hear my presentation, they often have a lot of hope for if they're parents, they have a lot of hope for their own kids because they've seen what I can do, and therefore they see me as like a role model for something for their own kid to do. They just have to make the effort to do so. So my view is like employers and employees shouldn't judge people with disabilities based on just their disability, because that's kind of being very judgmental in my view. So
right. No, I agree. And there's so much more to every person. Like, yeah, you have some disabilities. You might have to like work on supports and need different things, but also there's so many strengths. There's there's so many individual interests. So it's a whole person that has so much to them. And so it's like, how as employers can we build on strengths instead of, like you're saying, judge and just be like, oh, well, I'm not sure they can do this. It's like, well, ask them or try something.
Yeah. And I think we can all use a little more patience in our life anyway. We're so used to this economy and this life where everything's at the touch of your fingertips on your phone or Google or whatever. And I think we've become so ingrained in this, everything happens instantly and, everything should be easy. But the good things are not easy. They're, always take a little more effort when it's something really, really good. So I think, everyone taking a little patience and learning that lesson, and realizing that maybe you're hiring someone who has a disability and they might need a little more time to learn a skill, but they might stay longer and do a better job. Most likely they will. You don't know, it's obviously person to person, but I think that initial patience is what is missing from employers, because they just want the easiest solution. And hiring a person with a disability most likely will not be the easiest solution, but it's probably it could be the best solution. We're just missing out on that opportunity.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Awesome. Me too. I agree with that too. So we'll send that out to the universe and, keep doing our individual work, but hopefully like this conversation can start other conversations is kind of my goal with that.
Yeah. Super awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'll kind of, like, now we backtrack a bit. I'll do something a little more fun. Okay, here's my fun question. Brent, do you have a favorite joke in any of your books?
Oh, yes. My favorite cartoon in the first book is Raining Cats and Dogs. Because partially because I'm a big animal lover, and I really like animals a lot. And so the Raining Cats and Dogs really sticks out to me because it's really cute and very funny at the same time.
I agree. This is such a funny visual.
Yeah.
What about your favorite joke to tell during your presentation?
Well, a lot of the jokes one of the jokes that I like to tell is like knock jokes and stuff like that, just because my presentation shows how humor can evolve over time, and I also show how my sense of humor has grown over the years. And but one thing I like to do is tell like one particular knock joke during the presentation. Would you like me to tell you what it is? Or
Yes,
all right.
I'm ready.
Okay, so it's knock knock.
Who's there?
Danielle.
Danielle?
Yeah. No, yeah, you say Danielle who?
Oh my goodness, I messed up a knock joke.
Yeah.
When was the last time you heard a knock joke, though?
Right?
Start
All
over,
let's do
start
it.
over.
Do it again, do it again.
Okay.
That was on me.
All right. Say knock knock.
Who's there?
Danielle.
Danielle who?
Don't yell at me. I heard you the first time.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's really funny because it's an audience usually of a couple hundred people, so it is very loud when they say it. So it plays.
Yes, it plays.
Yeah, it's perfect for that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, I messed it up.
It's
I wanted
okay.
to make sure I said the right thing.
Right.
and then I left out the who.
No, all good.
It's all good.
It's when was the last time you heard a knock joke? Let's be real.
It's
Right.
been a hot minute.
Yeah.
We need more of them in our lives, I think.
Agreed.
I agree.
More jokes.
Yeah, a lot more jokes, especially in these difficult times.
Right. So, listeners, check out Unintentional Humor. We'll link it in the show notes because you guys need to laugh more during this crazy year.
Exactly.
Yes, we do.
All right. So, to kind of end today, do you guys have any future projects you want to share or any other resources you want to share?
Well, I certainly do. I'm in the process of making a third volume for my book as well. It's mostly finished. We just have to get it out on paper and print everything out. And I'm hoping to do it sometime later this year, but we'll have to wait and see what direction my business is going at that time. So, I hope to eventually do conferences again. I mean, we may have to do them like on Zoom, but I'm hoping I can do them some way. I just have to figure out how.
Yeah.
That's kind of what my business future is planned on at this point. Jen, do you want to what your future plans are?
So we're still offering online classes to Celebrate EDU, and we'll continue to do so for the foreseeable future, maybe forever, who knows. And so make sure to check out those. They're on celebrateedu.org. And Brent and I are also working on our own podcast.
Yay!
Yeah, which is in development. So hopefully it'll be released soon. It's going to be called the Discover Your Awesome podcast. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys both for coming on today and talking with me and talking with the community too. It's so cool to hear the work that both you guys are doing in both of your businesses. And they're just so important during these times and kind of all the time too. So really cool. And I'm excited to kind of see where they continue to grow. And I will definitely listen to that podcast. That sounds amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, awesome.
All right. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Brent and Jenny as much as I did, including our small cat detour and me completely messing up a knock joke, which is in itself an ironic kind of thing. And yeah, it was just really interesting to hear Brett's perspective on his own autism and kind of his journey in the job market and how he had to navigate that with a disability, leading to his entrepreneurship and his business that he's had for 10 years. And I'm also hearing how he's had to pivot during COVID-19, as many of us have as well too. And I think a big takeaway from our conversation is, as a community, we need to create more opportunities for individuals with disabilities in the job market in general, and then so that the individuals have more options to find the jobs that fit their strengths the best. And to kind of acknowledge that entrepreneurship is an option for individuals with disabilities, and can lead to really passionate, fulfilling careers instead of just having the 5F jobs, which can still be fulfilling for individuals as well too. So just opening up as many possibilities as possible so that individuals can, find that job that fits for them in their lives. And to not be afraid to hire people with disabilities, and to figure out how from that kind of standpoint structurally can we create more jobs in the businesses that we own. And Brett said it the best, to not judge people. And every individual has different strengths and potential, and as a community we can do better to make more inclusive opportunities and jobs in the community. So if you or a loved one with disabilities are interested in entrepreneurship, please check out Celebrate EDU and the awesome resources and courses that they're offering. They're doing an amazing thing over there, and that could be the right path maybe if you've experienced a story similar to Brent's and need to expand the opportunities in your life as well too. And then it will also be in the show notes, Unintentional Humor. These books are so funny. I highly recommend getting a copy. So both links to those websites will be in the show notes. So now we'll move into our last segment, which is the session plan of the month. So I'll read through it really quick. For a more detailed breakdown, I have a written breakdown and now video breakdowns every month in our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/navigating adulthood in IDD. And for $5 a month, you can support the podcast, listen to episodes early with no ads, and receive this breakdown of our monthly music therapy session plan. So I have Hello, Hey Ya, drumming, echoing their rhythms and playing to Over There or Battle Hymn of the Republic. Patriotic, Name That Tune. You're a Grand Old Flag with flag waving to the song. And then a cool down, Scarves, Fireworks by Katy Perry recorded. And then Goodbye, Nana, Hey Hey, Kiss 'Em Goodbye. So that's my quick little rundown of an idea of a July session plan for adults with IDD. And for more details on how I would implement these songs, consider becoming a patron on patreon.com/navigating adulthood in IDD. And you can also support this podcast by sharing this episode with someone you think that would like it, or subscribing to the podcast or rating it. All support is so appreciated and helps the podcast continue to grow. I'm super excited to continue making episodes for you guys. Thanks for tuning in today, and I will see you next time. This podcast is by Rhythmic Roots Music Services, LLC, with content and music produced by Bonnie Haupt. Thanks for listening.